Have you ever planted something and then completely regretted it? I'm going to guess the answer is yes, because I actually don't know a single gardener who hasn't had this happen. And today I'm going to talk to you about the 5 plants and 1 tree that I will probably never grow again. Hey everyone, I'm Erin the Impatient Gardener. I live and garden here in southeastern Wisconsin, Zone 5B, 6A, and I want to tell you about some of the mistakes I've made with plants. Now, before I get going on these, I will just tell you, this is my opinion. These are plants I probably will never grow again, all for different reasons, by the way. If you love one of these plants and you like growing it, just because I'm saying I probably won't, that shouldn't stop you from growing it again. So grow whatever you like. This is my list. And in fact, in the comments, I want to hear from all of you. What are the plants that you have made mistakes with that you will never grow again? First up is Artemisia Oriental Limelight. This thing was so pretty. I saw it in the nursery. This was early on in my gardening career when I would see something pretty at the nursery and just buy it without any other research or doing anything else. By the way, I still do this sometimes. And it was gorgeous. It was this beautiful variegated plant. I was really into variegation at the time, and I just thought this thing would be gorgeous. What happened was that it spread everywhere almost instantaneously. And I'm not kidding when I tell you, I still pull this thing out every once in a while. I planted in what I now call the circle garden. And every once in a while, a little bit of it will pop up somewhere. And I think this was 15 years ago that I started pulling this thing out. What a thug. So the mistake that I made with this is that this is Artemisia vulgaris, which, by the way, perfect name for what this thing did. It was vulgar. And this thing is native to Asia. There are Artemisias that are native to North America, which will be far better constrained. Although Artemisia can run a little bit no matter what. In any case, I have grown other Artemisias. I am always wary of them. There's one I tested last year called Artemisia Silver Lining, which is a proven winners plant developed by Walter's Gardens. And that is not supposed to spread. And I grew it last year, just one plant, and it was beautiful. I would absolutely grow that one again if it continues to behave itself. Next on my list is Coreopsis. And this was a plant I received actually from my mom, who had divided a whole bunch of her perennials to give to me when I was planting my very first garden and just needed plants to bulk it up. And I basically took anything anyone gave me. Now, well-intentioned, obviously, but this Coreopsis spread everywhere. It just went everywhere. It reseeded, it spread by rhizomes. I was completely taken aback. I actually am a little bit iffy on yellow flowers to begin with, but I actually think part of my reason I don't like yellow flowers that much is because of my experience with this Coreopsis, which was one of the very first plants I ever put in my garden. I now believe that this was Coreopsis lanceolata, which is sort of a flat leaf Coreopsis, which I believe is known to spread a little bit more. Now, I think all Coreopsis do spread a little bit by rhizomes, but this wasn't a little bit. This was like take over the whole garden, and it went crazy. Now, fortunately, when I pulled that one out, it stayed away. I still don't find some of that, but I was so taken aback, and it was such a messy plant. So I had it in the wrong spot too. I put it like right in the front of the border. And this isn't a plant that I would say is probably a plant that should be placed right in the front of the border where you're going to walk by it all the time, because it was just a big, kind of messy looking thing. Anyway, I was gun shy on Coreopsis for many, many years. And actually the first time I put Coreopsis back in my garden was a few years ago when Roy Diblick, who designed this garden right on the other side of my creek, put in a couple of Coreopsis, I want to say golden showers. I'll put the name on the screen, but put a couple of those in. And I'm like, you know what? And that's a thread leaf variety. And I thought, you know what? If Roy says it, I'll put it in. But I can see where it's spreading a little bit. But again, it's just, I feel like it's bulking up rather than actively spreading. So Coreopsis, at least that lanceolata one is off the list. Hey, before I get on to this next one, if you're liking this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to this channel. It helps me a lot, and I very much appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. Next up is bellflower. And I'm using a very generic common name here for this because we're going to talk about 2 different kinds. Now, creeping bellflower is an invasive species. It is a terrible weed, and I created some of this problem. It was here on my property, but right when I was beginning to garden, it was started popping up in a couple of places. And my mom even came over. She was really so helpful to try to get me started and figure out what the heck I was doing, because I had no idea really. And she said, that is a weed. And I said, how can that be a weed? It's beautiful. It has this beautiful spike with these little bell blue flowers on it. How can that be considered a weed? And she goes, I'm telling you, it's a weed. And I said, in a very sassy way, I said, a weed is just a plant that no one loves. And she said, okay, well, good luck with that. And boy, have I had to eat crow on that so many times, because it's everywhere. It's very difficult to control. There are Facebook groups on how to control it. It spreads by rhizomes. It grows these roots that almost look like a white carrot that can go down like over a foot deep. It's just impossible. I think there are 13,000 seeds per plant, and it spreads by rhizomes. It is absolutely terrible. So that leads me to the plant that I will not grow, because of course that is a terrible weed, and I wouldn't expect too many people to grow that unless you're like me and you fall for those pretty blue flowers. But sometime later I bought another campanula that was called cherry bells, and quite pretty little bell-shaped flowers, kind of white with red speckles on them. Well, you know what cherry bells did? Damn near the same thing. That thing is still running through one of my beds. And part of this was PTSD from what I've been dealing with creeping bellflower, but this has very rhizomatous habits as well. I will never go near there are some campanulas that have a completely different habit. I actually think I'll probably never go near a campanula of any kind again, because I am so scarred by this. But I would particularly watch out for any of these that have these bell-shaped flowers, because they've got ancestors that are real naughty. Next up is one that I know is going to be really horrifying to some of you, but it's lily of the valley. Now, I've actually never planted lily of the valley. It was here. Somebody planted it here. And I'm not going to argue, you guys. Lily of the valley is the sweetest, most beautiful little plant. It is also a massive, epic thug. I can only fight so many battles in my garden, right? So I've sort of decided that I'm not going to completely fight the lily of the valley battle, but I do try to keep it a little bit in check, which is almost impossible in the shady spots in my garden. When I redid my circle garden, maybe 2017 or so, it was full of lily of the valley, and I wanted to just get rid of it because I was redoing that whole garden, and it wasn't a huge space. And I dug those little pips out of the garden for days and days and days. I sifted through soil, and it still pops up in some places. I understand that lily of the valley is very sweet. I still pick the flowers and bring them in for an adorable little bouquet, so I get the attraction, but be very careful where you plant it. The next one is really going to upset some of you, and it's Daylily, Hemorrhoicalis. I used to love them. In fact, I got the Oaks Daylilies catalog and bought a lot of really expensive ones because I really liked it. And the only reason that Daylily is on this list is because I actually don't like it. And so I think part of this is I want to tell you, like, it's perfectly okay to swear off a plant for no good reason other than that you don't care for it. Like, don't feel bad about it, even if the rest of the world loves that plant. It's just not to my taste. And part of that is because I don't like the way the foliage looks when it's not flowering. I feel like if you want that strappy foliage, there are way better options out there. And I don't love those brown stems, and I don't love having to deadhead it all the time. Again, I will look at daylilies and go, that is a beautiful flower. It is just not something that I feel is worth having in my garden. And a few years ago, I summarily pitched it out of my garden. And I thought about it for so long, and I kept growing these daylilies because A, I had spent a lot of money on them, and B, by the way, they're also a lot of work. They need dividing a lot. But I kind of lived with these plants for a lot longer than I should have because I kept thinking, like, daylilies are great plants. People spend a lot of money on them. People collect them. I bought these expensive varieties because they're beautiful. And it wasn't until I finally just said, forget it. And I dug them out. I gave them away to people who wanted them. I dug them out and I pitched them. And I tell you what, the moment I rid myself of those plants that I was only keeping because I was supposed to like them, not because I did like them, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. So here is your permission to get rid of a plant for no good reason other than that you don't like it. It doesn't have to be particularly bad for any reason. Just get rid of it, free yourself. There's always a better plant that you will like better, I guarantee it. Now the shrub that I will never grow again, Potentia. Potentia. I grew that early on because I wanted to add some shrubs, and I went to the garden center and I said, I need a shrub for this area and I have deer. And they said, well, you got to grow Potentia. It's the only thing you can grow. First of all, that was a lie. There are many things you can grow if you have deer, especially if you're okay with protecting them a little bit. The deer ate the Potentia, not a lot, but they nibbled on it. And also, talk about, to me, a plant that offers nothing. The flowers are tiny. The foliage is not pretty. It doesn't do anything in fall in terms of foliage color. And I just don't think it is a plant at all that offers anything. When there are shrubs out there that will give you, spring interest, perhaps a really interesting foliage when the foliage is emerging, a really interesting flower display or a really interesting seed head display, and then some fall color. Why in the world would I grow something like Potentia that does, as far as I'm concerned, nothing? So out with Potentia. So the next one is a tree that I regretfully will probably never grow again. And that's because I have failed with it on 3 occasions. And usually that's sort of my bar for when I just stop. And it is redbud, Cerces canadensis. I love redbuds. They are stunning. There are new varieties out there that are absolutely gorgeous. Unfortunately, it is the new varieties that are so gorgeous I'd love to grow them. And some of the species and older varieties don't hold as much interest to me. I think I would do better with those. And this is a me problem. This is not a you problem. More specifically, this is probably a cold zone problem, and specifically this cold zone. Now, there are some that will do well here, or so I'm told, that are actually native range, includes Minnesota, that I have talked to people about at the garden center, but they don't offer the interest to me that some of these really beautiful new varieties grow. So I've killed 3 of them. I think I'm all done killing redbuds. Okay, so that is my list of 5 perennials, 1 shrub, and 1 tree that I will probably never grow again. And I can't wait to read in the comments what is on your list like this. Thank you for watching. Have a great day in your garden. And whatever you do, don't let creeping bellflower grow.